Hey there. If you're a frequent listener to our show, you already know that our show is brought to you by our friends over at Artillery Sports. But what you may not know is that Artillery Sports helps athletes of all types win on and off the course and court. They do this by selling quality, durable, and precision manufactured sports equipment that keeps you in the game, while also using a portion of the profits to provide the funding needed to care for our nation's veterans. With Artillery Sports, it's more than just a game. So head over to artillerysports.com today to buy the quality equipment you need to keep you in the game and to help our nation's veterans at the same time. That's artillerysports.com. Make sure you head on over there today. Oh, and use the code DOCFIRST to get 10% off your first order. Welcome to Documentary First, an inside look at documentary filmmaking. I'm your host, Christian Taylor, and a documentary filmmaker myself. This week, we are wrapping up our two-part series with Steve Cohen, executive producer of Billy Joel and So It Goes. Last time, we talked about the heart behind And So It Goes, and now we are flipping the spotlight. In this episode, Steve Cohen shares his story, from lighting stages to producing one of the most emotional music documentaries I've ever seen. Trust me, you're going to love where this goes. Now, on with the show. All right. So everybody, thank you so much. We're back with Steve Cohen. We've been talking so much about Billy Joel and So It Goes, his new film that comes out on HBO July 18th with part 1, and part 2 is the following Friday. It's a don't miss event. We've been talking about the band and Billy Joel and his family and the movie, but we haven't really talked about the behind the scenes and the band. And I really want to start with you, because here you are and we haven't really learned about you. So I'm so curious. Tell me about where you were born and what your family was like and how you got interested in lighting design. And just come on, tell me about yourself.
Wow. I'm a West Coast kid. It's funny. Everybody thinks I'm from New York, but I was born and raised out in Canoga Park in California, in Los Angeles. And, I was a theater kid and never went to any classes. So I never graduated high school. I ended up, playing in the theater. And, like all of us, we started bands and played a little piano and was always interested in performing and was always interested in show business. I remember as a kid, I used to cut school and drive into West Hollywood or into Hollywood and, try and break into the studios and watch them making movies. I had a fascination from that from the time I was very, very young. And then, I had a penchant for doing lighting. I worked at a club called the Starwood, which was on Santa Monica Boulevard. I did sound and lights and learned how to drink. And and I had a particular talent for interpreting music with light. And in those days, in the early 70s, it's very sophisticated. People nowadays don't realize how primitive, lighting was for music all of those years before all the computerized equipment would come in. It was really all about timing, composition, painting with light, and really, I just loved it. I just loved music, and I felt that this was my way of performing. That was, a way that I could make an impact. I made a decision long before that I wasn't really a great musician, but I had a particular visual acuity and a talent, and I went with that. I had a gut feeling about all of that. And I think I told you earlier, like my first, I started a lighting company when I was 20, and my first client of note was Billy Joel. Actually, was our first client. We had one lighting.
So how'd you meet him?
We cold called. I started a lighting company, and we cold called every manager on the back of the Billboard magazine. In 1974, Billboard would come out at the end of the year, and in the back cover was a list of every manager and their phone numbers. Remember, this is before fax. This is before computers.
Right.
So we started this lighting company, me and a couple of guys, and we sat and dialed and smiled and, told them, gave them a bunch of bullshit to try and get meetings. And the day that I met Billy's manager at the time and his sound engineer, my partner had met with the guys who did Earth, Wind, and Fire. And we came back home and said, "Hey, I got Billy Joel." And he said, "Hey, I got Earth, Wind, and Fire." And we were like, "Well, we have one lighting system and two clients." So I had to go and rent some gear and put together a very cheap and cheerful lighting system and get ready to go in rehearsals with Billy. Now, what I will say is I was a California guy. So I was like way into the Eagles. I was way into Linda Ronstadt. I was into progressive rock like Jethro Tull and, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and all of that stuff. And Billy Joel, Piano Man, had come out and it just wasn't my particular flavor. I just didn't like it. It wasn't a great song. And I was like, well, I don't know. Okay, fine. I guess I got a gig. And I showed up at rehearsals, and the band at that time was Billy, a bass player, named Doug Stegmeyer, a pedal steel guitar player named Tom Whitehorse, a drummer named Reese Clark, and a guitar player named Don Evans. And we were in this studio, and I set this lighting system up, and I'll never forget this. They started to play the Ballad of Billy the Kid. And all of a sudden, I heard this orchestral depth in an arrangement and this dynamics. It sounded like a Western movie mixed with a rock and roll record.
Yeah.
And, I knew that it had some pretty good rhythmic stuff, so I could do some lighting with it. And I left rehearsals. We'd done a few songs, and I walked away going, this is something beyond my imagination. Like it was something I had never heard before. And I went out on the road interpreting that music with lighting, in 1974. And it was like, you look at those things that happen in your life and, how you get brought to a particular place at a particular time that changes your life. I don't know what was in all of that, but I do know that those couple of weeks were life-changing for me.
Well, I hear a theme. I mean, so I was in theater too. That's how I started. All I wanted to be was an actress. And I was on Long Island. So I went to the Stony Brook School. I lived in Stony Brook, and it's just home to me. And I started acting there. And when you are there, it's all about the story.
Yeah.
It's all about the story, and lighting is a crucial part of that. And so when you're listening to Billy the Kid and you're hearing this, story, and that's all through Billy Joel's music, you can interpret the story with lighting. And so all of a sudden you're not just, lighting a band, you're actually telling a story with lighting, which, is very similar to theater. So that probably in the back of your head was like, oh, I recognize this. I can do this.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons Billy and I developed this relationship was because he knew that I saw that in the music. I heard that in the music, and he saw that I saw that. And you don't think about that at the time. You just put
Right.
your head down and do the work. But now, with the reflective, time between, then and now, what you point out is exactly correct. That he's a storyteller, I'm a storyteller, and we met each other at the right place. And I don't know if I even was aware of any of this stuff throughout the decades, because we just showed up and worked. That's all we did, is we just worked.
But how did you, because there were so many over, I mean, it's been 50 years, there've been so many that have come and gone.
Yeah.
So how have you lasted? What has kept you in the band this long?
I'd like to say it's because I'm good at what I do, and Billy recognizes that I'm good. I also believe that I have a particular work ethic that reflects his work ethic. I also knew to keep my mouth shut. Um, I also never got too full of myself in what I did. Like, I accepted the responsibilities as they were presented to me, but I never really, tried to bite off more than I could chew. I also, it's a tough bunch of guys. Like we were all pretty tough on each other, and
Yeah, I bet.
we were all, we were all, you never stepped out too much out of your own lane. But if your lane expanded and you grew to it, Billy was the first guy to say, "Yeah, go ahead and do that." I mean, he's a great boss. I think that the main reason that I've stuck around this long is because I love him, and I have done nothing throughout this period of my life but show up for him in the best possible manner, and I think he recognizes that.
Yeah.
Um, it's also a little different for me. I'm not a player.
Right.
So, I was able to shift and expand and grow in my role with him. I think that, in a lot of cases, the relationship between musicians has a sell by date. There people have to grow, producers
Right.
have to
Right.
grow. When it comes to that actual art form, you have to make changes in order to grow. And who knows why people come and go. There's a lot of different reasons that we've had. When we did the credits for the film, part of the thing that I put forth was that I wanted to list. We were talking about how to list the musicians, and I said, well, we have to list all of them, every single band member that's played with the band.
Yeah.
And at the end of the film, there's 56 names, and they're not in order of appearance, but they are, sort of chronologically. And it's all because when you're a musician, I believe that you need to introduce lots of different colors in the way you produce that film, produce that music. With me,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I was able to grow a little bit, and I'm, I think I'm actually kind of okay to be around. So it's like not,
I
I'm,
like you.
the other thing I can be honest with you about is that I kind of know when it's time to leave the room, and I think that's one of the things that makes me, that makes anybody successful in a professional relationship is
True.
knowing when to shut up and get out, and I think that's, I try never to overstay my welcome. So.
Well, this is a podcast for learning. People, I hope do learn things when they listen. And right there, you gave a long list of things that I think people should write down. It's a good list to learn from. I mean, if you do want to last in any creative relationship, and I do think you're right. Your role in particular was, you know. Easier than the others to stay because you were not necessarily in the band and trying to make it to another level. You also weren't taking anything from Billy.
Right.
You didn't really need to get anything from him. You were doing a lot of giving. You were it seems to me a very giving person. You were a very supportive person. You were there to make him better, right?
Well,
um
listen, I was there. I was there very specifically to take to take what he gave the audience and give it a visual component.
mhm.
And then that just evolves, and that just grows. I mean,
Yeah.
we all of those early videos. I directed all those early videos
Yeah.
before MTV. I came into play. So like the earliest stuff was like, well, Steve knows how to do that, so let him do it. Like there wasn't. Billy was not the kind of guy to search out and say, go find this director to do this stuff. Because number one, he hated to be in front of the camera. Number two, he
Yeah.
never really wanted to have a visual example. And this is where Elizabeth became very, very important in all this stuff, because for promotional purposes, before MTV, the only people that were doing music videos were the Europeans. So, she wanted to break him over in Europe. And the way to do that was to, do video of performances or conceptual videos or whatever you want to talk about. So, I did all of that stuff up until the Nylon Curtain. When the Nylon Curtain came out, that's when MTV started, and that's when Billy, worked with Russell Mulcahy and did those 3 videos for the Nylon Curtain. Then, of course, John Small did the famous Uptown Girl and that period of time. Tell her about it. But I did all that early stuff because it just fell to me. It was like, hey, I'll do it, and
Well, I mean, what's interesting, you kept saying you kept growing, and yes, you did the early things, but I mean, your career since then, you're not just a lighting guy, and you didn't just do the early videos. I mean, come on, you've got a long resume now of doing a lot of different things, and you've got a lot of things coming up. So, talk to me about all those things. Like, how did you get all this other experience?
well, I mean, the touring stuff begat more touring, which begat larger. I became a set designer, I became a production designer, I became a creative director. I did a lot of stuff. You stick around long enough, you end up crossing paths with a lot of people. I did the first In Sync tours, and when Justin and Brittany were going out, I ended up doing the Brittany tours, and I did the Eagles and Elton, and there were many, many opportunities.
Wow.
They all came from that. Initially the door was open with Billy Joel, but 10 years into my relationship with Billy, I was working with a lot of different artists. And then, as that developed, I started to do lighting for television. I started to do lighting for comedy specials, and the nature of my career, developed. One of the things I think, going back to the Billy thing, one of the reasons I think I've stayed with Billy as long as possible is that I had another career. And he really enjoyed my successes outside of Billy. He didn't feel responsible for me all the time. He didn't feel like
Right.
I was a burden for him. So, I was, he got a kick out of
Right.
me
Sure.
calling him, telling him that I'm in a rehearsal with Mariah Carey in the middle of Tokyo. And, he liked me having that window into the other world and reporting back. And, so all that was good. And then, as it developed, my first documentary that I produced was The Last Play at Shea, which was the documentary. And how that came about was, we were doing the last two shows at Shea Stadium. Billy wanted to, was being approached by a bunch of documentary filmmakers, and he was frustrated, and he just handed me a whole folio of people. He said, "You pick." Basically, if you want to do this, why don't you do it? It was sort of an abdication of him not wanting to have the responsibility
Right.
to do it. And then I ended up producing that film with Glenn Zipper and Nigel Sinclair and Paul Crowder and Marco Monroe, and then from that point on, it then fell to me to do all the television projects. So, now I'm in development with 4 or 5 other TV projects, and I'm doing some with Billy and some by myself. But someone was saying to me the other day, it's like, you know, are you really itching to do stuff, outside of Billy Joel? And I'm like at this place in my life where I'm like, I don't really care. Like, there is nothing wrong being attached to the mothership. Like, to
No.
me, having him as a mentor, as a collaborator, as a friend, I know that for example, I have a very good friend of mine who has written 2 books, who's honored me with the rights to develop them for television.
Hmm.
So I have these books, and I talk to Bill and I say, hey, read this book and let me see what you think about this and that. So there's a collaborative part of our relationship that I hope just keeps going on and on and on, regardless of whether or not he, sings Piano Man again, for all I care,
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think too, as we get older, and I am older, um, you begin to realize that time is finite.
yes,
And I think, too, as he's announced this new thing that he's dealing with, um, I, I want to hang on to him as long as I can. You
absolutely,
know, I mean,
absolutely.
my bucket list since 2014 was to see him in Madison Square Garden, and I never got there. I There's a whole bunch of reasons, but one of the big ones was because I was working on my film, and I was in France all the time in the summers, and so I just could never get there, and it's one of the biggest sadnesses of my life that I never got there,
Right.
and I hope he does sing again. If he ever does sing again, I will fly to Tokyo. I will fly wherever. I hope he does sing again
Well,
because
listen,
his
I
time
will
is
tell you,
finite.
like, I go to sleep at night, and I go to sleep at night with two wishes. one wish that I've thought about for years is like, what would I do if I won the lottery? And the second wish is the triumphant return to center stage at Madison Square Garden.
Oh,
So we're on the same page. You know, look,
can you please, if that happens, if it's even
oh,
in a,
you're coming. If it happens, you're coming.
I mean,
And listen,
seriously,
I don't cut him. And listen, I do not cut him out of this world. You know, there's part of me that knows him so well that if he's able to do it, you know, he can't stay away. You know, like there's a part of him that just, you know, loves that.
I just keep hoping that. I keep thinking, like I keep thinking, I actually been praying about it because I keep thinking this can't happen. He can't, I just can't have missed this opportunity. I wanted to do that before I died. It was in my bucket list. How can that just stop? I mean, I never thought it would stop.
Right.
When he announced that it was going to stop, I was like, what? Like, he can't stop. He's the Energizer Bunny. Like, that can't happen.
Well, it's funny. Tom Hanks said something on the red carpet the other day. He said, you know, people set their calendars to when they're going to go see Billy Joel. And,
Yes.
you know, we were only doing 2 shows a month, but we were doing 2 shows a month every single month.
Yeah.
So
That's why I thought it was just so consistent.
yeah.
And I wasn't in a rush. Like, I thought, oh, I don't have to rush. And I mean, I have plans with friends in New York, and I've made them like the last 2 or 3 years. And, every year something comes up, and I'm like, well, we'll do it next year. I mean, and so this past summer it was the closest. And then, so you have to call me.
Yes. Yes, I will. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Listen, and you can tell him I pray for his health. And, it's even harder now that I've watched this documentary because he's so self-revealing. You just feel like you know him at the end.
Yeah.
You feel like you're part of his family.
I'm really, really happy that's your takeaway from this, because that tells us all that we've done our job, that Susan and Jessica
Oh,
have
man.
done their job. And listen, he says it at the end of the film, I'm not done. I'm trying. And
I know he does say that, and that's what I love about him. Like, the thing that's so great about him is that you guys talk about how he's always fighting for something, always grasping, it's never enough. He's always, fighting, and it's true. And we all are. That's the thing, if you wanted to go to one thing in his music, it's that,
yeah.
It's that we're all grasping. We're all trying to grow. We're all trying to get to know our parents better, right?
Yeah.
We're all trying to understand ourselves better. We're all trying to figure out why our relationships broke, or, we're all trying to love the people in our lives better. We're all trying to leave something for our children so they won't forget us when we're gone.
Yeah.
I can't air this podcast.
But you know what's great about this, and I'll tell you, as much as it's raw, like, this is life. This is the thing. This is what we're here for. Feeling our feelings and experiencing them and sharing them is the biggest gift any one of us can give.
You guys did just such a great job. And this is going to touch so many people. I was watching all of those people, just, lying all over the stage. Like, I couldn't believe this is like back in the 80s when they were so close to the stage, and he's standing like right at the edge. Like, that would never happen today. And I just couldn't believe it. And it's like this alligator's arms, all over the place. And I just, and then you look at Madison Square Garden or all these other places, and you think about, like, I was just in Normandy. Okay. So I took this veteran that's 102, C.O. Bauer. He's in my film. And in Normandy, you take these World War II veterans back, and these people, these French people, are so grateful for their freedom. It is like they are Billy Joel.
Yeah.
Like it's like they're Elvis. It's like they're Jesus. They just want to touch the cloak. They just want to touch them, And it reminded me of that. And I was at on stage with him for this event, and I looked out, and there were just thousands of French people out there, and it was nothing compared to what I saw in that Billy Joel film.
Mm.
And 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 when I was on stage like that, I was so overcome with that amount of people and just how moved they were just to see and hear this veteran. And I just can't imagine. Now I know why Billy does it. I mean, he's giving people something of himself. Like how he, you know what? He wore a jacket. This is hilarious. From the time that he started, he would wear a jacket, and he still wears a jacket when he plays piano, and he's sweating like crazy because he gives every ounce of himself. I mean, he just is going to pass out at the end of a concert because it's like he leaves it all on the field,
Yeah.
and he does it for these people because he loves them.
Yeah.
He
Well,
wants them
and
to feel what
it's
he
funny.
feels.
I'll finish with this. The thing about the jacket, which is probably the quintessential. I'm glad that you brought this up. Is what he wore on stage. Very early on, he would wear this short leather jacket,
Yeah.
and then that went away, and he'd wear a suit coat and a tie. And it was like, why are you wearing a jacket and a tie? And he'd say to me, because the audience paid money, I could at least give them a little bit of respect.
Aw,
And that's why he has worn that
I wondered.
career, was simply because if you're going to go spend money to see me play, I got to show you a little bit of respect and
Wow.
dress up. And it became a convenient style guide for him because it's easy. He didn't have to chase trends, although he did have some wacky jackets. The orange jacket we used to call the Beast, but it was always that. And I think that is the quintessential Billy, in that, he always said to me, you show up and work. Like, that's what you do. If you're going to be a bus driver, be the best fucking bus driver you possibly can.
Yeah.
Like, that's what this is about, because at the end of the day, that's all you got. And that isn't false humility to me. That is what I define as humility. That it's an accurate assessment of your place in the world. And Bill taught me that when I was 20 and he was 25. I don't know where he got it from, but it was somewhere, knowing
Yeah,
his
it's
history.
especially given, let me just say this, especially given his upbringing,
Exactly.
because
That's what I was saying. Like,
truthfully, he doesn't have those role models in his life to
no,
teach him those kind of ethics.
but he figured it out, and he figured it out in some way, and I think it's because um, he always believed his talent was a gift and nothing ever to be taken for granted. And also nothing, never really wanted to get under the hood to understand why, because he always thought that the magic would be, dissipated. Like,
Mhm.
if I figure it out, then I'm going to know too much and it's not going to happen. There's a certain mysticism and spiritual quality to the way he approaches all this stuff. I mean, he's not really that much of a spiritual guy, but I think that there's a through line of miracle in his
No question.
discoveries, and I took from that. Listen,
Well, I'm a very spiritual person, and I believe there is a creator that gives gifts, particularly when I see someone like Billy and like you. And truthfully, I was sitting here thinking, we've been talking a lot about Billy, we've been talking a lot about you, but there are so many other people that made this film,
yes,
whether it was, Tom and Gary, or whether it was Susan and Jessica, or whether it was all the people behind the scenes that we haven't even mentioned. I
yeah.
mean, there are color correctors. The color was beautiful. The editors were amazing.
Well, I mean, that's James Pilat and Stephen Ross and Chris Lime. I mean, listen, I think it's so amazing to watch that participation, because
Yeah.
really at the end of the day, you are at the behest of your editors. They give you a
Yes.
rough cut, and they see something in what you shot that you
Yeah.
never even saw.
Yep. But
And
also, how hard do you know? I mean, I'm sure you do. You made this, but I mean, people out there don't know how hard it is for sound designers to do a rock biopic documentary. Like, sound is really hard for a documentary like
well,
this.
and
And
I
the
mean,
sound was amazing.
well, because this is a podcast about filmmaking, like that's a real important point that you brought up.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did was, and this was, part of the things I'm so proud of is, Brad Lee, who was the engineer for Phil Ramone, who made, 52nd Street and Nylon Curtain and Songs in the Attic and Glass Houses. He was responsible for the Dolby Atmos re-releases of these records that went on Apple about 3 or 4 years ago, and we brought him in to take every one of these tracks and mix them for 5.1, mix them in 5.1, so that the film had authentic 5.1 Dolby tracks, as opposed to an ersatz mix where you would just sort of make it sort of spatial. He did
Mm-hmm.
all of that. He created all the instrumentals.
Oh,
So he stripped Billy's vocal from the original
I
track.
mean, you're basically redoing sound for this.
So really, it was part of the deal that I had said when we were going to do this from the beginning, is that the sound and the audio quality, if we're going to take this, it has to be,
Yeah.
it has to be it has to be the best. So he came in. The other thing we did was, there's about 4 or 5 pieces of music that are score that were written and produced by Tommy Burns and Tony Bruno. Tommy's
Okay.
Billy's guitar player. Tony is his collaborator. And they took and did reinventions. Susan had an idea when she did the ancestor section that she wanted Vienna to have a score. She wanted Vienna to be a baseline for a score,
Oh,
but she wanted it to feel.
I remember that.
She wanted it to feel a bit more sort of Eastern European, and
Ah,
so she tasked them. She commissioned
that
them
was
to write these
great.
pieces. They took pieces of Laura and Rosalinda's Eyes and Souvenir, and rearrange them, reframe them to underscore part of the Raza's story and part of Billy's story. So musically, I think this film is so well defined and so well executed, because of the time involved, because of the work that Susan and Jessica,
Yeah.
and we all just sort of we really put the hammer down, all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it
It
made.
was, I mean, it just definitely a huge collaborative effort from people who put all the heart and soul in that. And they wanted to make it the very, very best. And, I want to say hats off to all the people who were willing to be vulnerable, the ex-wives, the ex-band members, the children, and the stepchildren. And there was just so many people who were willing to step up for Billy to make this film. And it is not easy to do that,
Yep.
because it lives forever.
Yep.
I hope that it was a healing thing, perhaps, because it was for me watching it. I was thinking a lot about my own stuff.
Mhm.
So that was very special to watch. And I was just, very thankful for that. Is there anything that you would like to talk about, anything that happened, anything that you were really proud of, anything that nobody ever asks you, that you want to talk about?
Well, I'll tell you. I think the thing that comes to the top of my mind for me is, you spend your life, living your life and working and showing up and doing the best you can, and you never think that you get an opportunity to watch it play back in front of you. And that Billy trusted me to be the gatekeeper, that he trusted me to be the shepherd, um, told me about a relationship that even I didn't understand.
Yeah, you
And
didn't know you had.
and I think the most astounding thing about this is that we've gotten here. Um, so many times I thought the plug would be pulled for some reason or another, and that I was able to learn about myself and learn about Billy in ways that I never anticipated that it would happen. So, like, I pinch myself. You get really, these kind of opportunities don't ever present themselves. And what that does for me is it motivates me to try and share this with other people so that I can tell them all you need is a bit of reflection, and you too can have the grace that comes from this kind of process. The friendships that I made. Look, I'm 71 years old.
No, you're not.
I'm too old to have new friends. Like, I don't like, what do I like? We have friends. Like, I have now in the past 4 years have relationships that are going to last the rest of my life that I wish I'd had for the past 30 years because of this project. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a testament to Bill, but at the end of the day, I'm a pretty lucky guy, and I think that that's the thing. If there's anything I can take forward is, we're all of service. We're put on this earth to be of service. So by being a part of this movie, and I'm just a part of this movie, this is not my movie. I did not make this movie. I was a soldier in an army that helped march this army to a victory, to a goal. I helped Susan. I helped Jessica. I supported them. I gave them gateways into things. I had a draft of a memoir that Billy had written that I had the only copy.
Wow.
And I was like, well, Bill, I think there's some good shit in here, but you gave it to me. And he's like, I don't remember. So I opened that up and gave that to Susan. So I was
Wow.
able to I was
Oh,
able
is that where did the handwriting things come in? I loved that
Well, no,
technique.
that's how he writes lyrics. Those books were all that he always wrote in a longhand spiral notebook.
So he still has those
Oh
notebooks?
yeah, no, those notebooks are all they're all in storage. Yeah,
Oh man, I hope those are in a museum at some point. That was so cool
yeah.
where they I loved whoever did that. I mean, those I'm
Graphics
sure
are
it was
great. The graphics.
Jessica and Susan, but and let me just give a shout out to the ARC producers, because those are the archival and clearance producers, because the archival stuff in here and the way that the directors used those, it was brilliant. It was just engaging. It kept you wanting to lean in. It
Well,
wasn't
it's,
boring.
it's interesting. The Pentimento team. First of all, they're all women.
I love that. Yay, women.
They're all women. Katie Ash, Sydney Kalpas. The archive producers. They were involved. Knee deep. John Jackson, who used to be at Sony for 22 years, came on as our own archivist for Billy. We've just brought him on board a couple of years ago. He's one of the archive producers, and we both, we're in the boxes, pulling stuff out, saying this is a better version of this. This is a better version of that. And in the process, we've discovered footage that I didn't even know we shot. I just got a rough cut of a concert that we shot in a club in Long Island in black and white that I only thought we shot 3 songs, that I've got a rough cut of about 12 songs. So,
Wow.
because of the process. So, it was tremendous. And listen, this is not HBO. I got to give a big shout out to HBO. They wrote a big check. They wrote
Yeah,
a
they had to.
big check, and this is
Yeah.
a properly funded, justifiably funded
And did it
documentary.
take 5 years? Like, how long did it take?
About 4 years, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, about four
And
years.
really, honestly, that's quick given how big this task
Yeah,
is. I mean, this is 50 years, 51 years of a man's ginormous
yeah.
career. I asked Alexa, I asked Alexa to list for me how many albums Billy Joel had. And I think it was like something like 146 or something. And I was like, what? I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Oh, and I learned that he did write he wrote a classic piece called Fantasies and Delusions.
Classic. It's a classical album I mean, and it was number one on the classical charts for 12
Didn't
weeks.
even know that.
Yeah. See,
I
there
thought
you
thought I knew everything I could about Billy Joel. I learned so much in this film. Listen, truthfully, all the people behind the scenes that nobody knows about, the art producers, the, sound guys, you know, all of them, please tell them what an amazing job I thought they did. And, I know how much of a collaborative work it is. I know that everybody poured their soul into this because it wasn't just to make Billy look good. I think that everybody knows this is a big family and it's not just his story, it's our story. And it's the great thing about Billy. He invites everyone into the story. One of the pictures I loved is in the very beginning, Elizabeth talks about this. And there's a name for you guys. She said, all of a sudden you became this big something. It's like
Oh, we're the Mean Brothers.
Mean Brothers. What does that mean?
I don't know. We just had an attitude. We were tough.
Oh,
We were,
MEAN.
yeah,
MEAN.
yeah, we were mean. We were just mean. We were just mean guys. And in fact, we weren't. We were all a bunch of sweethearts, but we like to profess that we were like, oh yeah, we're tough.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was the Mean Brothers. There was me, MB1, MB2, MB3, MB4, and then Elizabeth was Queen Mean B. So,
Yeah. I mean, he made this family and he stayed with his family. I mean, how many of you guys are still close? How many people kind of stayed in the
well, the
family?
ones that are still alive, we're all close. I mean, we're not close, but it was great reconnecting with everyone. I have this connection with all those guys in the original band because I was there with them at the beginning. They're not there. I still am. So when we needed them for the film, I was the guy who reached out to all of them. So, and I think it's been a great opportunity for all of us to reconnect.
Tell Liberty I loved him. Like I just loved him. I loved watching the evolution of him as a man, like boy to a man, and just the way he looked. He looks really cool now, by the way. You can tell him I thought that. And I just loved how he was butthurt, but then came back and, I loved how he said, I'll play for you anytime, but, tell what's his name. I don't remember his name.
Right.
Yeah. I'll never play for him again. I just thought he was the coolest. And I mean, you guys listening, you have heard so much right now that you can learn from. You have been in the business for a long time and, you didn't finish high school, but you got a master's. You got several master's degrees over the course of your life. It is stunning to me what you have accomplished in your life. And, not just in what you can do, but I mean, I'm listening to you. I've gotten to know you over this time and I hear the depth of your knowledge of people. And no wonder Billy loves you like he does, because you do equal, I see you have the same heart and understanding of people and care. I mean, if you're going to stick around like that, you have that, you do mirror him. I get it.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I love talking about this, and you brought out stuff out of me that like Susan brought out of Bill. So
it's my job.
I really appreciate it. I can't wait to hear what you cut this show up into. And
there's no cutting.
This is live. This rolls the way it is.
This rolls the way it is. We'll cut the little pause out just a little bit, but I'm going to roll it from the beginning, and I probably will leave.
I can't wait. And I think that it's a service that, if we've had the opportunity to educate and to share experiences and inspire people to go make good work, I think that both of us did what we needed to do here. So.
Yeah, I think so too. We'll probably divide it up into two podcasts now because we've talked for an hour and a half. And I think it's just been delightful. I've learned so much. This has been an opportunity of a lifetime to meet you. I wish I could be your friend forever. It's just, you're an amazing man. And I thank you for what you've taught me since I was 13 and what you've taught me in this podcast. So
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait for people to see the movie. And, we're not done yet. Just like Billy says, we're not done. We got lots more to do.
Well, Samantha has my email, and
Yes.
I'm going to send you my phone number and my
Please.
and listen. Well, we'll talk when I hit end. But anyway, all right. Is there anything else? Oh, let me do like a quick. We're supposed to ask people. I have a special segment of my podcast, so hang on 1 minute. We're going to do my special segment. It's called DocuView Deja Vu. Do you have a documentary that you would like to recommend to our audience?
Yes.
Go on, shoot.
Well, I have two. I think The Kid Stays in the Picture is one that has resonated with me forever. It's about
I've never heard of that.
Bob Evans, and I think you know what the problem is. I don't think that's a doc. I think it might be a narrative.
That's okay. That's okay. We kind of we fudge things here sometimes, so it's okay.
And I will get into an argument with my friend Susan Lacey about this. But I think that the Frank Sinatra documentary will always stand as.
I can't believe you said that.
I love the fact that there's no talking heads in that film, and it's all done audio wise.
Yeah.
I think that was.
Yes,
that was probably one of my favorites.
I can't believe you said that.
I'll tell you the other one that I just saw that I really liked was Barry Average's David Foster documentary. I thought that was a really interesting thing because I thought David was very, very raw in all of that, and he got him to be completely honest.
Yeah.
And then my fourth, which is probably the number one, is of course my friend Susan Lacey's Leonard Bernstein documentary. I think that is far and away one of the most superior artist documentaries. That probably goes on the top of my list.
Yeah, she's amazing. That is a fantastic one. But I'll tell you that Frank Sinatra documentary, it's just as long as yours. I mean, if not longer. And I have watched that. I've watched that. And when I watched yours, I thought the same thing I think about Frank Sinatra's. I watch it all the time. And it's crazy. I don't know why, but I just could watch it over and over again. And his is linear.
Yeah.
But it kind of doesn't matter. I just love it. And yours is the same way. I thought, this is a kind of documentary that I'm going to watch over and over again because I just love this story and the music is there.
For us to be in the same world as Frank Sinatra, that's mission accomplished.
Yeah, well, you're there. You're there in my book.
Please let's stay in touch. All right.
I would love that. Yeah. All right. Now don't go away. I'm gonna click stop recording, but don't go away. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to Documentary First, where we believe everybody has a story to tell, and you can be the one to tell it. Bye, everybody. Follow Documentary First on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. This podcast was produced by Documentary First, edited and mixed by Jason Hoban, with music by Jeff Kurtenacker.